answer for about 30 seconds, and we'll take the best clips from what you say. And if you want to start over, no problem, and just talk as much as you want, and we will use the...
Okay.
No problem.
Okay. Okay.
Ready. So, what is the role of energy sector in climate change mitigation?
Well, it has the biggest role so far because the major sources of greenhouse gas emission is from the energy sector, mainly from the burning of fossil fuels, coal, natural gas, and oil, of course. So if we have to address mitigating emissions, then we really have to focus on the energy sector. Um, right now, after the Paris Agreement and after the IPCC report came out, um, we the report really pointed out the need to decarbonize, to do decarbonization of the energy sector. And in fact, for the Paris Agreement, countries submitted what they call as INDCs. These are voluntary commitments of the countries in decarbonizing their economy, and many of them are targeting the energy sector. But studies have also assessed this voluntary contribution, that even if all these countries really comply with their submission, will still be emitting enough greenhouse gas emission that we surpass the 2-degree increase in temperature, which we are trying to avoid. So for us working in the climate change mitigation area and also working in the energy sector, we have to seriously address, firmly address the use of fossil fuels, the use of basically fossil fuels. I would say the technology is there. When you say we try to decarbonize energy system, what do we mean by that? We mean really promoting first energy efficiency. This is what we call the low-hanging fruit. This is the first and easiest way to decarbonize energy systems. And a lot of work is being done already on energy efficiency, energy conservation, but that's not enough. You have to, of course, promote renewable energy. And many people think that renewable energy is still expensive, but it's not the case now, as being shown by many countries who are really have firm commitment policies, implementation program, putting budget on renewable energy, that renewable energy can compete with fossil fuels. And in many cases, it's really the lack of the policy commitment, the lack of really putting investment into renewable energy. But particularly also for developing countries, a major source of constraint is capacity of the country to implement such project, starting with formulating that project, designing the project, implementation of that project, those projects. And this is where our work with UN agencies comes in very important, because we do and help countries build up their capacity. But still, that's not enough, I think, for a massive transformation of the energy sector. You still have to build a critical mass of engineers, planners, economists, policymakers, down to the level of technicians that will really transform the energy sector. And I think the constraint we're facing now is where that resources will be coming from to really lead to that kind of capacity building and transformation. Right now, the question about investments is probably still is a constraint, but the UNFCCC has established the Green Climate Fund, and the Green Climate Fund is supposed to provide resources to move into a low carbon system, and there's funds available for investment that can be obtained from the Green Climate Fund. But one constraint, as I said, that many countries are facing right now is coming up with really good quality viable project that can be funded by the Green Climate Fund. And the major reason, as I said, in coming up with those projects is people who can really write and formulate this project, implement this project. So there are constraints on policy, there are constraints on investment. So it's, as I said, investment is somehow, there's the Green Climate Fund, but there's also the constraint on inadequate capacity in many of the developing countries. So I think all of this has to be addressed together. And as I said, as part of the UN group, I am with the UN Environment Program Climate Change Mitigation Team. We try to address the aspect of capacity building.
That was very good. We have many points you made. So if you could just address one of the things you said, so the renewable energy, how we can increase renewable energy utilization in about a 20-second clip. And then, so I'll just read it to you one time. So what can we do to scale up the utilization of renewable energy?
Well, scaling up renewable energy, several countries have shown us already how is it to be done. Germany is a leading example of scaling up renewable energy. And much can be learned about from Germany's experience. Now these are being replicated on smaller but increasingly bigger scale in developing countries. I would tell really, first is firm policy commitment of those countries to really promote renewable energy. What is interesting to see in many developing countries, if you look at their energy program, is you will see them that they will have a component on renewable energy. They will have a component on energy efficiency. But try comparing that with the components focusing still on fossil fuels like coal power plant. I will not name countries, but you will see that some countries will have, they will have good and large program in renewable energy, but they will have larger programs, larger funding for fossil fuel systems. And I think one very crucial issue that has to be looked at and has not also been firmly addressed is fossil fuel subsidies. Now, renewable energy is being asked to compete in the energy market, but how competitive really is that market? How many countries are really subsidizing massively their fossil fuel sector? And now here comes renewable energy. You are being asked to compete with a subsidized competitor. So that's really part of the policy environment also. And we have yet to see countries really moving forward towards removing subsidies. Or maybe in some countries, they're looking at the option of the carbon tax. So these are policy strategies that has to be really looked at, understood by the policymakers, particularly the energy and the economic finance policymakers. One constraint that I see, again, in some countries is that when you talk to the energy policymakers, they are dominated by people who are historically been involved with large fossil fuel systems. And it takes a while for them to go beyond that perspective, to look outside the box and see that there's not just the large fossil fuel-based power systems, that renewable energy can and have a big role to play even today, and of course in the future.
Okay, perfect. Last question. Thank you very much. So, how can we engage various stakeholders in achieving SDG 7?
Well, the key stakeholder, of course, is the energy sector. But within the energy sector, you have different subsectors. As I mentioned before, you have the fossil fuel subsector, you have the emerging renewable energy subsector, you have energy efficiency people. I forgot to mention transport also, which uses massive amount of fossil fuels also in the form of diesel and gasoline. Now, who should really organize a very effective stakeholders consultation, a very open one? Who takes that responsibility? Normally, you put it under the responsibility of the energy ministries. But as I said, some energy ministries are really looking more toward fossil fuel system. You can take the environment ministries taking the lead, but whether they can ask the energy sector to comply with, that's also a constraint by the environment ministries. What about the state economic planning body? Maybe that's the ideal one, but that presupposes and assume also that the state planning body has a good understanding of climate change, of sustainable development, of the SDGs. It will be on a case-to-case basis for the countries. And again, I think international organizations like us has a role to play there in terms of sensitizing by these various agencies and in terms of providing them support so that they can effectively organize this kind of stakeholder consultation and have a very open dialogue and a very long-term perspective of development. So that's what I can say.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that's fine.
Perfect. Very good.